Okay, I think we have a pretty good quorum here of people attending. Looks like we can get started here, and thank you. First, I'd like to say thank you for joining us today in these interesting times. Today, we're here to talk about how we can democratize SAP data with Snowflake, and have some co-hosts with me. Here's today's high-level agenda that we will be walking through. As we go through the presentations, we ask that you ask your questions in the Q&A panel that is available in the Zoom functionality. And at the end of the session, we will try to answer them both in the chat and verbally. And we can have our panelists, myself, Troy, or Matt, answer these questions for you. So as they come up, please do put them in the Q&A section. So just a quick introduction. Obviously, the democratization of SAP data is important for many businesses, but we'll do a quick little introduction about our presenters. I am Keith Smith. I run the Snowflake business at phData. I've been in the data ecosystem for about a decade now. And one of the biggest problems and most challenging problems that we see customers have is with SAP data and getting that into some data products. And I'd like to introduce kind of the star of today is Troy. And Troy, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Keith. My name is Troy Fokken. I'm a principal architect at phData. I've been with phData for 4 years now, and I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of our customers, lead their projects of SAP migrations across various industries.
And thanks, Troy. And my name is Matt Schmidt. I am a senior solution engineer at Snowflake out of the Chicago office. You may have seen me put my Eagles jacket on there for NFL Day. Hopefully you don't hold that against me. But as I said, I'm out of Chicago, and I've been with Snowflake for just under 1 year. Prior to Snowflake, I spent most of my career at SAP, where I was in services as a BW consultant and in pre-sales working with companies on their data management strategy. So thank you for having us today and joining the webinar. So let's jump in. So first off, who is Snowflake? Snowflake, we were founded in 2012 with our two founders from Oracle, who built a product from scratch in the cloud, taking advantage of the abundance of power in the cloud. And we went GA in 2015, where we were leaders in the Magic Quadrant and the Forrester Wave within just 3 short years. So really, we came out and disrupted the data warehouse market. And now things have really started to evolve because of the technology we've added to Snowflake and because of what customers have done to push the limits of Snowflake. So we're really identifying ourselves now as the cloud data platform. If you haven't heard that yet, you'll start to hear that more in the coming weeks and coming months as we start to roll that out. And we are delivered as a service on top of AWS, Azure, and GCP. Just a few fun facts about Snowflake. We have over 3,500 customers today. These range from the Fortune 10 to small and mid-sized companies with 100 employees or 200 employees or even less. So really do the whole gamut of customers. Just a few other ideas about how much we can scale. So the single biggest customer in Snowflake today has over 26 petabytes inside of Snowflake. So really impressive scale. Then a single customer is running over 9 million jobs in their warehouses every day. So really Snowflake is capable of a lot for big customers and small all alike. Now let's jump in to talk a little bit about what is Snowflake. So Snowflake is the cloud data platform that meets most of your data needs. So for example, your data engineers, they can come into Snowflake using standard SQL to go and combine all of your structured data. Maybe that data is from SAP, from some other line of business solutions like Salesforce that you want to go integrate together to give you a view of your sales. Or maybe it's going and combining lots of different SAP systems. They're going to be able to go and bring all that data together in Snowflake. But it doesn't stop there. What if you have a lot of IoT data streaming from your devices that you want to go combine with that structured data? Well, we can bring all of that data natively into Snowflake, structured and semi-structured, and be able to query that all at the same time. And that gets us into all of our data. I mentioned really quickly about a customer having 26 petabytes. So we can have truly vast volumes. And in that story I just mentioned, I talked about semi-structured data. So being able to ingest and query that semi-structured data is going to present such powerful insights for all of our business users. And then that gets us into performance at scale. We have customers who are basically running 2,000 simultaneous queries against a 40 billion record table that all return in under 10 seconds. So we're really able to load all this data, whether it's structured or semi-structured. We're able to get performance on that data all out of the box, because at the end of the day, this is delivered as a service. What we want you guys focused on is loading that data, querying that data, and getting insights. We don't want you to have to worry about going and running indexes or running vacuuming processes or doing those pesky upgrades. We're going to deliver this as a service so you can get value out of that data. So I'm going to pass it back to Troy.
Thanks, Matt. That was a great introduction into Snowflake. And we'll be obviously highlighting how that helps in the later sections. So a little bit about phData. All we do is data engineering and machine learning. And the reason that is important is because we see repeatable patterns that come up over and over again at customers. This includes SAP data, where we're founded out of the Midwest, and we see a lot of manufacturing, agricultural type customers, and they basically run their business off of SAP. It includes basically the key to their business of has the crown jewels, that we like to say, of data. Also, we have a dedicated engineering team that helps get those repeatable patterns, or get some of those things that we see at all of our customers into some software, open source software or tools that help accelerate the migration or the process to get SAP data into Snowflake. We're a company of about 160 data and ML practitioners, and we have, over our time, over a little bit over 5 years, have over 100,000 SAP pipelines in production across our customers. So getting into the heart of what we're going to be talking about today, why do we want to democratize SAP data? And that's simple. It's because it is where all of our business value comes from. It tells us about our customers. It tells us about our finances. It tells us about HR. And that's why we have Troy today, to help walk us through his experiences and the benefits he's seen working with customers at phData. So Troy?
Yeah, thanks. So what I want to go through in the next couple slides is some of our customer success stories and stories of them using SAP data to build better business value. And a lot of it comes from, again, getting your SAP data alongside of other systems that are important to your business, whether they're ERP systems, custom developed applications, or off-the-shelf software. If you get that data into a central data platform that then you can drive analytics and insights off of, you can build a better story about your business in general. The first customer was a large device manufacturer, and their devices send a bunch of IoT messages back to their cloud provider. What we built was a way to stream those events into Snowflake, but the events themselves had a lot of information about the performance of the device and how the device was operating, but really didn't give us insights of where even the device was located or what customer was running that device. That information came from SAP. So we worked and built, our data engineering staff built a pipeline to get that SAP data alongside the device data. And the outcome was providing better customer service to the people that were running the devices. So when they called the manufacturer had better insights of who the customer was, what maybe modules they had installed on the device, and how to support that customer better. The second example was a large agriculture company where, through various acquisitions, they ended up with 27 different SAP environments across all these different lines of businesses. Well, between various business units, they couldn't even tell whether or not a customer supported one business unit or all 27. The goal there was to get all of those SAP environments into the data platform and then do an MDM solution where they could build a customer 360 dashboard and say, here's what this customer is, here's the products they buy, here's how they interface with our company. And again, it's really to give a better look into who the customers are and figure out additional ways to build revenue from those customers. So next, what was the first thing that these customers asked? And it was, we want to be now a data-centric company, right? And make decisions based on our data. And as we said, and as everyone knows, SAP is the main source for a lot of those critical data sets, whether it's your actual manufacturing and plant operations, all the way down to finance and logistics of how your business is running. And what that means is, traditionally SAP is a very restrictive environment because it is running all of these critical business functions. And we don't, the businesses themselves don't want these ad hoc business analytics and queries running against those transactional systems and causing performance problems on, like a manufacturing assembly line. So, the SAP environment is very restrictive in how the data is delivered. And what this means is you need to find SAP developers that, work in like the HANA domain and the analytics solution for SAP. And those types of developers are hard to find and hard to retain in business. And, what the goal here is to give developers that maybe aren't, as knowledgeable in the SAP landscape, a way to view the data, query the data, and build insights for the businesses. And without this unified data strategy of bringing data into a central data platform, it's hard to, fully understand your product, your customers, how to increase your revenue and cut your costs. So what does data access look like without doing a migration effort to a data platform? Many of the customers that I've worked with and had the opportunity of going through this effort with, it looks something like this, right? We take data extracts out of ECC or the SAP application and land them as flat files. Those flat files are delivered via, shared file servers or SFTP locations. Then your data consumers consume that data via Excel or, even Access in some instances to build dashboards and build, ways to visualize that data. But this inherently comes with a problem, right? Is after that data has been landed into that file share, there's no way to view or understand how that data has been shared with other people and who has access to that data. So there's a security concern in this approach. And what the goal here is when you bring the data to something, a data platform like Snowflake, you can add role-based access controls. You can see audits and queries, like what queries are being ran, who ran those queries, and ultimately, be able to fully understand how your data is being used throughout the environment. The final reason that I hear a lot of my customers come to me with is SAP is expensive, right? Using HANA is expensive. Bringing data to HANA is expensive. And what that means is when you load data into HANA, you pay for the data that you load in the environment. And a lot of these various tools and ways of accessing HANA are also licensed per user or per environment, which increases the cost and also decreases the amount of people that can actually access the environment. Businesses will make decisions and say, only this team gets access because we don't want to pay licenses for another development team. And again, like common data science and machine learning tools don't have native connectors into these environments. So if you want to start building complex machine learning models, having integrations into the SAP data is often difficult. And the goal here is use something like Snowflake and really, really get value out of machine learning and data science models. So next, Matt's going to take an overview of SAP, the landscape, and some of the technologies so that we all understand what it takes to get data out of the environment.
Yeah, thanks, Troy. And so I'm assuming if you join this webinar, you probably have some familiarity with SAP, but let's just spend a minute to make sure that everyone's on the same page. So first, a few marketing stats that we have here is SAP is the largest provider of ERP software in the world. And about 92% of the top 2,000 companies in the world use some form of SAP, whether that's ECC or maybe one of the cloud applications or something like business objects. SAP is around in a lot of the companies we work with. And they have some marketing stats that say about 77% of the world's revenue dollars touch SAP in one way or another. So we use this slide to say SAP is in a lot of the landscapes that we see. And the focus today is really around ERP and ECC, because this is just a treasure trove of great data. It ranges from your finance and controlling with P&Ls, how you're running your business, how your business is going, all the way to logistics with sales and distribution, inventory management, production planning, really the backbone of your organization. And then HR also is usually in an ERP, though SAP has sometimes taken that out now as success factors. But really the point here is that there is so much great data inside the ERP data that your users are just itching to get access to. And so when it comes to SAP, we really kind of focus on a few different areas. So as I just mentioned, you have the ERP, the real heart of the organization, the heart of SAP, and the heart of your companies with the backbone of finance, HR, logistics. And then 10 years ago, they actually introduced HANA. HANA, as Troy just explained, is an in-memory database that has done great things for the ERP system and that. But when it comes to data warehousing and putting stuff in memory, it does have a cost. And so that is something that we've been challenged with. Another solution that they have, and this is really what they introduced when they just weren't able to get reporting out of the ECC system, was BW. And so BW has been their data warehouse solution. And so these are the different offerings that we talk about with SAP. And our focus today is really going to be on complementing the ERP strategy that they have. And if we kind of dive into this a little bit, what does that architecture look like? So here is a really high level architecture of what your SAP landscape might look like. You probably start with your ECC stack, then you start to introduce BW to do some of that reporting. And then, as I mentioned, 10 years ago, introduced HANA, and HANA really kind of found its place as being a data mart with doing a bunch of really fast real-time reporting. Well, it really became difficult in these landscapes when you have all these different components that you're trying to keep in sync. And then when we talk about the scale of data in today's world, where you have the SAP data, you have this Internet of Things data, we really need a place where we can bring all of that together and have it be open to the standards of developers and all the tools that Troy mentioned there. So that's really what our focus is going to be on, is how you can get out of this architecture and open up this data for all of those different use cases. So now the question really becomes is, how do I get data from SAP into the cloud and into Snowflake? And there are a lot of options out there. And so first I want to say is, yes, you can get data from SAP into Snowflake. And you're really gonna, that's when the decisions start to be made, is, do I connect directly to SAP or do I make other decisions? And so what Troy's gonna go through right now is a few different options that he's seen at customers and what they've been able to do when it comes to loading SAP data into Snowflake.
Yeah, great. So when it comes to loading data, I usually see three different patterns occur, right? And it's really the first question you need to ask when starting to look at where do you actually integrate bringing data into your environment. At the very first level or deepest level within SAP, if you will, is database level migrations. And this is usually taking the transactional data from ECC and the relational database that it's built on and replicating those events as they occur to Snowflake. And this involves using Snowflake's technology partners, tools like Attunity and HBR, to capture those changes and replicate them and stream them to Snowflake. Then there's server level replication, which is often called like using HANA as a sidecar, or ultimately involves using SLT, SAP's Landscape Transformation Service, which replicates data from that ECC to HANA, and then connecting to HANA and using batch or a streaming pipeline to get that data into Snowflake. The final way is the operational data store of using iDocs and SAP data services. So you make HTTP requests into SAP, you read the iDocs of various business objects that you're looking for and replicate those back to Snowflake. So I'm going to walk through each of these in a little bit more detail and give you some benefits and drawbacks that I've seen various customers have while they've approached these. So again, the first one is database level migration. This is the way this usually causes the least impact to the system overall, because we're replicating at the transaction level of the database. And these transactions can capture change data capture on clustered and pooled tables. And those are usually very tricky data sets to go and replicate, because there is some specific SAP related ways that those tables are managed and operated on. The other one that usually causes problems when you talk about, trying to do a batch driven approach like server level, which we'll talk about next, is tables without timestamps. People that do incremental ingest know that, you have to use a timestamp to know what data has changed from last time I ingested to now. Well, this process works with those tables that don't have any record of a timestamp as well. But when we talk about like how you have to evaluate this with other things, the first thing we need to look at is your licenses that you have with SAP. For some customers, the license that they've agreed on may dictate them to have to use a different way to replicate data out of their environment. Then if we're replicating at the database level and we're replicating the database objects, that doesn't contain any business logic that's happening in the ABAP layer or even at the BW layer. So any of that type of business logic and data mapping that really drives some business insights at those layers would have to be rebuilt in Snowflake itself. So that leads to a little bit more development on that type of activity, but the next couple things also have some custom development involved, so you have to weigh out your differences there as well. So at a high level, what does this look like? Again, phData recommends using a tool like Attunity or HBR to install in the customer's data center alongside their SAP environment. These tools will capture changes directly from the transaction logs on the database and write those changes to a cloud storage location. This cloud storage can be S3, can be Azure Blob Storage, or now even ADLS. That's generally available now with Snowflake. And once that data is there, the tools will automatically create and monitor Snowpipe. Snowpipe is a tool for continual data ingestion into Snowflake. So as these files are written on these storage locations, Snowpipe will automatically pick up that file and move that into a change table. This change table contains when did that operation occur and what was that operation? Was it an insert? Was it an update? Was it a delete? Right? And then finally, there's a merge into tasks. So it looks at those incremental changes and says, I need to apply these changes to a reporting table or the final table. And this is where your downstream consumers of business analytics or applications should be reading the SAP data to drive additional business products and insights. So next is server level migrations. And this is using more of the SAP tools with SLT replication to HANA. So this then does support full extraction of data and change data capture. This is the main service that sources data into HANA and is very common in a lot of our customers' environments. This can also replicate objects post-ABAP implementation and can be done in near real time or batch. The drawbacks here are, again, cost concerns. SLT and the data that gets replicated is all licensed. So you have to look at the cost that it takes to use SLT and HANA. But most of the time, we see our customers are already using HANA for their analytics environment and have BW and reports built on it. So, enabling and offloading some of the work to Snowflake is a really easy process when the customer is already replicating with HANA. And then finally, there's some custom development that's required to basically take the data from HANA and get it to the cloud storage. And I'll show you what that picture looks like right now. So I had worked with a customer that was an Azure customer, and Data Factory has the ability to connect to both HANA and ECC. So what we did is we actually installed Data Factory's runtime integration, which is the worker, if you will, of Data Factory that actually connects to the HANA environment, does the incremental pull, and moves that data to blob storage. Data Factory itself is a tool in Azure that's a UI-based way of integrating data sources into an Azure environment. So what we did is we built a job that connected to HANA and then wrote the data to blob storage. From there, then we used our internal tool, PHData's internal tool called Streamliner, which again is a tool to automate data pipelines in Snowflake from cloud storage to like reporting table in Snowflake. And overall, the data pipeline looks very similar, right? We use Snowpipe because it's a great tool for that continual data ingestion. When a file is present, it automatically gets brought over to Snowflake. And then Snowflake has a concept of a stream. A stream can be applied to a table, and a stream will track incremental changes. So think of it like an offset in Kafka or any other way of tracking, like here's the blocks of change that have happened or records that have changed between last operation. So what a task can then do is actually connect into a stream and say, is there any changes that have occurred? If there are, then execute this merge into statement. If there's been no data change throughout the whole data pipeline, right? The task will wake up, check the stream and say, there's no records in the stream, and just happily move on to the next execution cycle. So the final way is the operational data provisioning migration, which is IDOC integration. IDOCs and doing OData requests into SAP support full extraction and change data capture as well, but more in a pull mechanism than a push mechanism. This can support business logic extractions as well, so you can get more of the BW layer of objects out of SAP. And being that you're making more of a REST request into the system, you can actually get objects that contain the relationships and their child elements. And this is beneficial for a tool like Snowflake because Snowflake supports semi-structured data. So if you have a system that will go and store the OData into a semi-structured record, you can then move that data to Snowflake in a semi-structured way and use dot-notated SQL to go and pull value out of those objects. The drawback is this is usually the most amount of like custom development involved because you have to build a process to go and make calls into SAP and move that data to Snowflake and ultimately your cloud storage layer. And this does have the potential to cause the greatest impact in terms of resource consumption within the SAP environment. So again, the picture that this looks like is, using something like a Lambda function or an AWS function to call and make requests into the customer's SAP environment and communicate over OData records, and then write that data to object storage. From there, again, the pipeline looks the same, and we PHData use our tool Streamliner to automate and orchestrate the data pipeline in Snowflake. So I introduced Streamliner a couple times and how we use it with our customers. I just wanted to go a little bit deeper into like how Streamliner works for SAP ingestion and also for getting basically any data source that you have in your cloud storage to Snowflake. So what is Streamliner? Streamliner is a configuration-driven data pipeline automation tool. And how it starts is with data source discovery. We need to know what data are we actually bringing to Snowflake and how is it structured. Streamliner has a way to crawl a relational database, glue data catalogs, or Azure data catalogs to pull back that metadata. What is a table? What columns are in the table? What data types do they have? We then use this with templates that create a data pipeline. So, when we talk about CDC ingestion into Snowflake, there's roughly 10 SQL scripts that are needed to be created per table to go and create that pipeline in Snowflake. So these SQL scripts contain DDL, DML, and a whole bunch of other stuff that need to be executed in a specific order to create a data pipeline. And our Snowflake data pipelines use native features that I kind of covered earlier of Snowpipe for continual data ingestion, streams for incremental change tracking, and tasks to ultimately merge those changes into a final reporting table. So what does this mean in terms of SAP? Well, when you look at SAP, there's thousands and thousands of tables that make up various modules within the environment. And if we talk about, hey, we need to create 10 scripts for every table, if you were to approach this manually, it would be a significant amount of effort and can lead to errors, right? If I had to handcraft every one of these scripts, me personally, I'm not perfect. I would make an error here and there and wouldn't know why that's occurring. The idea with Streamliner is that every table should follow the same way of getting data into Snowflake. And it creates an easier to maintain data pipeline. And in terms of support, because phData does manage services on data pipelines, it's easier to support those pipelines throughout the life cycle of that data ingest. Next, Keith will kind of cover and what we learned and some next steps.
Thanks, Troy and Matt. That was a great overview. And thank you for walking through all the intricacies about your experiences with working with SAP throughout the years. It's very insightful. So now that we've kind of defined what the benefits of SAP democratization are, we basically should have answered the questions that our abstract and our invite for the webinar came up with. And our core here is that we want to say that, hey, it is actually possible to get your data into a cloud native type of approach. We also think that Snowflake is the best platform to do it on. I think that we've highlighted, Snowflake allows you to combine many different sources, including SAP. It allows you to expand on who gets access to the data, and it also gets you into a cloud native approach. The other key benefit is it standardized the method of actually interacting with this data, meaning instead of writing custom scripts or custom codes to interact with ECC data on your SAP platform, you can write SQL code and open it up to a broader team. I think we also have shown that as you plan out this ingestion framework, it's important to have an initial investment up front to make sure that this problem can be solved again and again. Basically, there may be a little bit of an upfront cost to and time to get the right method in place, but that means that the next data product that you build will actually be much easier because you can reuse what you worked on initially. That can be the pattern, the tools, even the data. We also kind of touched on some of the tools and data engineering practices that that we recommend or that we see. And then the kind of the last piece is SAP is very complex. We didn't necessarily touch on it before, but it was basically 27. SAP can have 27,000 different types of tables to ingest. That's pretty extreme, and it has different nuances and different schemas to handle that. And we introduced Streamliner, which is a tool that can help. Obviously, if there are other tools out there that we do also help with and have services around to help with. So if we follow the data engineering best practices, we believe that you will have continued success with not only with Snowflake, but with SAP data extraction. So how do you get started on this journey? Well, we offer a workshop hand in hand with Snowflake. We definitely want you to get involved with your Snowflake account rep, have them bring us in, have phData account rep as well, bring us in for a workshop. It will be someone like Troy or myself who has had the SAP experience on it. And basically what we want to do is we want to understand your SAP landscape. I mean, we presented a couple of unique challenges that we've had in the past, but obviously every business is different. Out of that, we will have we'll be able to go into the next phase to be able to plan what that looks like. Do we need other tools? Do we need a specific way to set up Snowflake? We may or may not. And then at the end, the phase 2 is actually getting to the movement of data. And we'll be sending out some details on this after the webinar is over. And then, once we've gone through that workshop, one of the ways that phData helps further this process is, since data engineering is our core, we can touch on SAP or the broader ecosystem of data sets that you might need to bring in. But what we want to do is we want to make sure that we have a good base, have data that's built up the stack to allow machine learning and data science experts to come in and build data applications and data products that will drive your business forward. Everything that comes out of data engineering and machine learning is basically a pipeline or some sort of data application. And you're going to need someone to be able to execute and monitor that on a 24/7 basis. And we do, Troy had mentioned just a little bit earlier, but we do offer managed services to allow for some of those pipelines that you need to have managed on a 24/7 basis. That wraps up the content portion of the webinar. And I appreciate everyone that was able to attend. We're going to transition to QA, and we're going to be able to have Troy and Matt answer some of the questions that have come in. Let me pull that up real quick. Okay, so the first question that came in is, this is a question about change data capture. Are you able to detect change in SAP without loading the full data set? If so, how do you do it?
Yes.
Troy, it's probably best answered by you.
I can step in first. So we do have technology partners here that would really be able to connect to SAP. We mentioned a few in this call, and it's not supposed to be an exhaustive list, but we mentioned both HVR and Attunity. Both of these tools, and again, there are more, that have the ability to connect to SAP, whether that be the application or database, as Troy mentioned. And those tools are able to set up the change data capture. And if your question then goes on to ask, do you need to do a full load first? There are techniques within those tools to set up change data capture from this point forward and whatnot. So there's a lot of different options there to do that, but we have a lot of tools that can help us with that process. And then then as you saw Troy's setup, or you can even connect those directly to Snowflake and have them handle the merge process. Troy, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add.
Yeah, I guess just in my experience, right, the full load is kind of like your historical data records, right? So once change data capture is enabled, you're only witnessing events that have changed since you've turned on the capture, right? So you'd be missing data if you didn't do a full load, because basically, right, if you're trying to create relations between child-parent tables and you didn't do a full load, you could be missing that relation between those two tables. So my recommendation is that you always do not only the full load, but then turn on the change data capture capabilities.
Yeah, thanks, guys. That's great. So the next question is around the level of data permissions. So how do you ensure the same level of confidentiality of data in Snowflake as it is in SAP? Do you mirror the permissions from SAP in Snowflake?
Yeah, and this really gets into security in Snowflake and how do we apply that? And we have role-based access controls. There would be a process, a manual process that you'd have to do to build the security in Snowflake that you have inside of SAP. But it would just be essentially using our secure view technology and role-based access. But you'd have to do some manual effort there to build that out in Snowflake.
Yeah, exactly. I see it as like you'd have to do an inventory effort of looking at how those roles are applied in your SAP environment, document them carefully, and make sure that those same security measures are implemented in Snowflake. And a lot of times customers implement a different and more complex security model, like even in their HANA environment that's outside of SAP specifically. So you would have to evaluate those types of security concerns as well, and then make sure that the role-based access is set up appropriately.
Yeah, that's very insightful. Well, I mean, obviously we have services and tools that can help. So I think that will be able to get a like for like from the source SAP system. Okay, so next question will be: most customers have SAP ECC running as a runtime license, which blocks the the ability to extract data from SAP ECC from the database to cloud storage. And SAP recommends to have an SAP HANA with enterprise license in between as a data mart. So are we not able to get rid of the HANA cost as part of the data offload?
Yeah, so I can jump in on this one. So first, most customers have SAP ECC or S4 running on runtime, which blocks extract. Sorry, let me actually say it this way, which blocks extract from database. And that's the key statement here, is that you are correct, is if you have a runtime version of HANA, you cannot go access the database directly and then do a replication. You actually have to go up a level and you have to go to the application and you have to connect there. And there are tools that can do that. So today we kind of focused on the database level replication with the 2D HVR, but things like Informatica, Talent, business objects, like I've done a POC where we worked with a customer where we set up SLT connected to ECC, and then we had data services connected to SLT, and then that pushing into Snowflake. So there are ways to, I don't want to say get around licensing, but there are ways to be within SAP licensing and getting that data out. You really do just have to work with your partners and with us to make sure that we're doing that within compliance. But there are ways to do it, and Troy kind of walked through the different options there.
Yeah, that's really good background. So the next question is does your offering include other SAP-related systems like Reba? So
our focus was really on the ERP system and your classic on-prem solutions. When it comes to the cloud LOB solutions, those do have a little bit different way of getting data out. And SAP's really kind of gone on the API methodology. And so there are tools that can connect to those cloud services and be able to load that into Snowflake. So this has been focused more on the ERP side, but if you want to get data from those cloud products, it would be a little bit different of a conversation, but there are ways to connect to those and get it into the cloud.
So we're seeing a lot of questions about HANA. Troy, can you expand a little bit on capturing incremental pull from HANA?
Yeah, so an example of this was when I was working with a customer, the way in which they loaded their HANA environment was they were able to tell SLT to add the incremental or the timestamp in which the event occurred. Also the operation. So there was 2 additional fields added to every table that SLT replicated, the timestamp and the operation. And then from the timestamp, we were able to call via JDBC into HANA and do incremental pulls. So we stored a timestamp into a database and said, last time we ran, it was this time. So when we woke up and ran that batch process, we would go pull that record and say, we want all of the HANA changes that have happened from that timestamp to now, and then bring that into the data platform. And then the operation flag, we were then able to use to trigger the merge statements into the final reporting table. So SLT has the process of adding those additional fields to the records when they're replicated.
Perfect. A couple of HBR and Attunity related questions have also come in. You know, what is kind of like the ideal warehouse size for the change data log capture that they use? And there is a question also about licensing, and those obviously are separate from the Snowflake bundle, but we can certainly talk about that. But anyone want to handle the ideal warehouse size?
Yeah, the licensing one is, yeah, you would have to, you know, work with your Attunity account team or your HBR account team to get a separate license altogether. The other one around warehouse sizes, Matt may want to chime in, but in my experience, it's really around how busy is your SAP system, right? So recommended size, it's like, well, do you use your SAP system similar to the one company I mentioned where almost every business unit had their own implementation? Or I've worked with other companies where they have one really large SAP environment running their whole company on that. Well, that means there's a heck of a lot more changes coming through, and you need to appropriately size your warehouse to make sure that there isn't like a backlog of events going on and piling up.
Yeah, I mean, I would just confirm what you said. That's the classic consulting answer, is it depends. But generally, when we talk about the streaming and change data capture type design patterns, those are fairly small. So you'd be surprised what you can get away with. And I'd imagine it's a small, extra small type warehouse that'll meet these needs. But Troy made a very good point. You'd have to want to monitor that, make sure you don't have backlog and that type of stuff. So a little bit of a consulting answer, but.
Yeah, and in my experience, especially with just ingest into Snowflake, your warehouse sizes can be relatively small and see a lot of events. You know, I've had data pipelines that are doing several million events every couple seconds on a small warehouse.
Powerful stuff.
That's pretty powerful. So one of the last questions we have is kind of the reverse of what we've talked about. Actually, is now that we've computed all this stuff into Snowflake, is there an integration pattern back to S4 HANA? That's the way I'm understanding this question. Do we have techniques to translate to that?
So actually, Keith, I read that one a little bit differently, and our focus on this conversation has been really on the ERP and ECC and the data model underneath of that. When SAP introduced S4 HANA, I mentioned this kind of my preamble about SAP is they've done a lot of impressive things with the ERP. And so one of the things they've done is reintroduce reporting back there. They changed the data model. They updated S4. And I would say you have different options when it comes to S4. You could do exactly as Troy just outlined with doing replicating against those base tables, building out data models. Or you could even look at this in a futuristic way where you have your S4 and you have your embedded S4 analytics that you're leveraging in these CDS views. Those CDS views can actually be a source of extraction into BW or into Snowflake even. So tools like Informatica and data services can connect to those CDS views and extract that business logic data. So you're going to want to really dive into your requirements and what you're really trying to do, because you do have some different options in S4, but I would still say the design patterns that Troy's laid out are still really good and some things that I would really focus on.
That was really good. Thank you. I think the last question we have, we had briefly touched on machine learning and data scientists. How do you connect pandas or Spark ML to Snowflake with the SAP data that we've ingested?
Yep. So we do have a Python connector to Snowflake available. It is on our documents page that has the ability to connect pandas and all of that to Snowflake. So the Python connector.
Awesome. And if there's any other questions, feel free to reach out, to email us. We'll be sending out some follow-ups emails after this is either later today or early tomorrow. And that's all the questions that we have. And thank you all for joining us. And have a good day, and hopefully the rest of the weekend too.
Thanks all.
Thanks.